John Quinton. I'm Professor of Soil Science at Lancaster University and I work on the sustainable management of soils. We're working with Lake District farmers who are a meat wholesaler and they're interested in trying to drive their business down towards net zero. So we've got involved to think about how soil management on some of their farmers who supply them with meat could sequester more carbon in the soils and how that might help them move towards net zero in terms of the meat that they then sell on to restaurants and other users of their products.
Lake District farmers have worked with the university for a number of years. They've had short-term projects with students, they've had longer-term projects and dissertation projects with students as well. And these projects have spanned across the Management School, the Environment Centre and the Centre for Global Eco-Innovation. And all of these projects have been focused on how, as a business, Lake District farmers can reduce the environmental impact of their activities. These projects all built up to help Lake District farmers get a clearer understanding of how they can help to reduce their environmental impact of their operations. In conversation with the company, it became evident that the next step revolved around something that was far more specific and required a greater degree of expertise that only academics could deliver. Once we had established the scope of the project, the academics got involved in discussions and helped to refine and develop the project further and established that this was a project that fit with the criteria of a KTP. Once they had that, the application process was very smooth and the application was funded and the project was set up and established in just a few months.
It's great because we're not scientists. We're butchers, we're farmers, we're people that generate food for the community. The mission is basically to create a sustainable future for Cumberland Fell farming, and the vision is how do we get there? How do we bring all those elements together and make sure that our farmers are supported as they can be? And that's where our conversation started to branch out into different organisations, and then we had a great conversation with Lancaster University, and they have enabled us to take the elements of what we do know and the areas that we don't know, and how do we start to bridge that gap. And that's why it's so important that we work with people such as Lancaster University to help us understand that. We work with roughly around about 50 farmers throughout the year. We take in their full carcasses, age them up in our chillers, and then we bespoke butcher for our customers, mostly based in London. They range anywhere from Michelin star restaurants to corporate hospitality for big banks and big businesses, mostly within London. The majority of the farms that supply Lake District farmers have hill or marginal farms, which are difficult to manage, difficult to farm. And as we come into this transitional period where farmers start to kind of unpick what they've learned since the 1950s when intensive farming really started to come into its own, they're having to relearn or rediscover what their great-great-grandparents might have done. Rather than going down the monoculture route with farms, they're looking more at diversification. How can they change their farms? How can they plant trees? How can they relay the hedges that were dug up years ago? How can they re-wet the peatlands?
So one of the problems that the meat industry has is that they are net carbon emitters, and it's quite difficult to drive down the amount of carbon that a cow excretes, and that carbon then goes up to the atmosphere. So that, in terms of the scientific challenge, is a major one facing the whole of the meat industry. So by working with Lake District farmers and with their suppliers, we hope to be able to create a meat which is at least closer to net zero than the current products.
LDF quite literally wouldn't be here unless it had a great relationship with its farmers. It spends a lot of time, I spend a lot of time with farmers, talking to them, understanding how their farms work. No two farms are the same, even ones that are side by side, neighbours. The ground is different, the rocks are different, the plants sometimes are different. I mean, some valleys in the Lake District can have more rainfall than others. So that's what the farmers have to deal with, and we have to understand that so that we can then factor it into the story that we then tell to our customers, so they can understand why the product tastes the way it does, why it has the different flavour profiles or the different textures, because the animals, as they're grazing through the landscape or through the pasture, they're basically giving you a good a representation of that environment. If you look at biodiversity on farms, which goes hand in hand with sustainability on farms, LDF is actually very, very close to what we call the coal face, which is, farmers noticing climate change because they're out there day in, day out. We can see it. It's a tangible thing to us. We can see what can happen to the environment if it's managed badly. So we needed to address that, and in order to do that, we needed to talk to people and get people to help us who had already been on this route or know how to achieve it, particularly when it comes to farming.
They were interested in how they could quantify the soil carbon on the farms that were supplying them with meat, but also how they could understand what the future may hold in terms of that soil carbon stock. So could they build the soil carbon in the soil by carrying out regenerative agricultural practices on the farms that supply them?
I guess when we're talking about regenerative farming, we need to first understand the soil. As farmers, I'll go onto one farm and the farmer is so enamoured with his soil, he will dig up a sample and get me to smell it. And it's that kind of passion that they have for their soils. They want to get back to there. The soil science department that are helping us with the KTP are paramount to us understanding exactly what's going on. Because without the science behind it, we don't fully understand it yet.
We're hoping that this KTP will produce a meat product which is as close to net zero as we can get it, and we want to try and account for the benefits of carrying out restorative farming practices in the meat producing industry, and in terms of innovation, we will not only be carrying out soil assessments and carbon stock assessments on farms, we will also be using models to project what happens to that carbon into the future based on management changes on those farms. This is then coupled with some environmental accounting that partners in the management school will be supporting. So it's a really kind of interdisciplinary project, and I think this is quite innovative in this space, and particularly for companies to be taking on this kind of a project. What we're hoping to do is to try and understand how carbon stocks change on farms in response to management, so that we can provide an insight into how much carbon may be sequestered in the soil and in response to changing agricultural practices on the farms that supply our KTP partner, Lake District farmers. I think the interesting thing about the KTP is that it provides us with a way of getting to speak, to a lot of farmers, and to work on their farms, but also to use the knowledge that we gain to have a real impact on the meat producing industry, and particularly the practices of restorative farming in the upland areas of Britain, and particularly the Lake District.
They're great KTPs because to bring that level of knowledge into a small business like this is such a great opportunity, and I for one am really, really excited for where it's going to go.
The university team brings quite a bit of new kind of scientific knowledge to our KTP partner. So there's my own knowledge on soils, and particularly soil carbon cycling within those soils. There's my colleagues, Jess Davis, who brings knowledge around the kind of prediction of soil carbon changes. And we also have our colleague Jan from the management school, who will be looking at environmental accounting, so looking at the multiple benefits that might accrue from these management changes and how they might be brought onto the balance sheet of this company to demonstrate the kind of, I suppose, the promotion of sustainability within the meat sector. By working with a very high profile company such as Lake District Farmers, we have an opportunity not only to bring about change within that company, but for that company to act as a kind of beacon for the rest of the industry, and hopefully we'll see other parts of the industry following their example.